right. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Thompson.
And I'm Allison Grinberg-Funes, and this is Content and Coffee, the podcast for people who are navigating big changes in the industry and want to stay on top of their game.
Our focus, the content that brings users in.
And the UX writing that keeps them engaged and successful.
All right, well, let's just get right into it. A lot of people are still super confused about different content roles. I mean, I feel like in 2025, we've got so many different names, which is great. I mean, the content industry has just really become very specialized, and we do need that. But there's still a lot of confusion in sort of the differences between UX writing, content marketing, content strategy. And I know that we come at content with different backgrounds. And so I just thought, let's use this very first episode of Content and Coffee to start from ground zero and sort of talk about what the different roles are, different responsibilities, and how we can work together well.
Or so what's interesting about UX, or rather not even interesting, common, is that similar to other industries, people fall into it, right? It's not necessarily a line of work like medicine where you have a very linear career path laid out in front of you. And my background is a great example of that. I went to Emerson College. I studied book publishing. I thought I was going to be, an editor of the next Ernest Hemingway. And I graduated the year that the Amazon ebook came out. It was right after the recession, and the publishing industry was kind of quaking in its boots. So I actually ended up falling into the tech world. I was temping, and I ended up in the world of customer support and success, and really bridging the customer and the company. And I noticed that there was actually a really big impact on product of the content. And I would be in stand-up meetings with different Scrum teams, and I would see that maybe there was a bug, but it all started with a piece of content. So anyway, I'll backtrack just a bit. I fell into that tech world for a couple of years, took a hiatus to actually work in publishing since that was my degree. And I ended up really missing writing. So I went to a staffing agency in New York City. They're also all over the US. It's called Creative Circle. And I asked them to help me find a copywriting job. And instead, I ended up working there as an account executive, which meant that I would work with companies across several different industries to help them build their creative teams. And that was the onset of the UX boom. So we had all of these designers who used to be in graphic design or animation or motion design, and they were moving into this new world of UX and UI. And that's when I discovered also what then was called content strategy. And it still is. And we'll get talking a little bit about those names. Today, it's more so called content design. When I learned about content strategy, because of the way that the design world was working, the folks that were doing those roles actually had more of a design background than a writing background. And so it took me a couple years of exploring projects at different places I was at after I left Creative Circle and understanding how I could use my skill set as a marketing writer and apply those transferable skills to UX writing. So what I found, I started taking on more and more UX writing as my career progressed. And actually, when I met you, Emily, I was mostly a content marketer. Emily, for those of you listening, she and I worked together on content when I was working in a company called Simply Business. They sell professional and general liability for small business owners. Think super small, fewer than 5 employees. And it was there that I was given the opportunity by my manager, Mariah Bliss, shout out to Mariah, do more UX writing. And I loved it. I wanted to do it full time. And so I took what I learned at Simply Business. I left and I went to Liberty Mutual, where I was for the past few years, working with a team of brilliant content designers across different portfolios in the company. So I've done everything from supporting several different products teams on things like an insurance quote flow. I've worked on payment experiences, conversation design, and chatbots. I'm very passionate about accessibility work, but that's where my career is right now. It's been a long, winding path. And I think what we'll talk about later, Emily, is how technology trends and things like AI have contributed to the winding path that we as creatives are taking, and how we may end up in a place that, although exciting, is not necessarily where we intended to. But that's a little bit about me. Do you want to share
Yeah.
with our listeners your background?
Yeah. Have we both talked about the fact that we both went to Emerson College? I don't know if we have ever talked about that.
I
We
don't know
did.
if we have,
We
but you
yeah.
you did your
Yeah.
master's there, right?
Yeah, I did. I did in health
Yes.
communications. So, yeah, so for the listeners, I mean, one of the reasons why I was just super excited about starting this podcast with Allison is because I just love that the two of us kind of come at content from with different backgrounds, but both angles are critical for, a successful product. So I come at things more from sort of the storytelling, content marketing side. I studied journalism, reporting, and mass communication from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Go Badgers, shout out. Yes, got my start there. Honestly, I wanted to be a news report, like a TV news journalist. So I, did those type of courses. And then toward the end of college, I kind of learned a little bit more about what a reporting job might be like. Like, especially if I worked for the newspaper, it would be basically carrying a police scanner around, possibly in an unsafe area, getting news details to, the paper, a story to the paper by 2 a.m. So I just wasn't that into it. And I got a great internship at University of Wisconsin Hospital and Clinics. And what was interesting, and this was like 2004, okay, and 2003, 2004, and so at the time, I think they were really ahead of the game when it came to content strategy. I don't even think they were using the term content strategy. However, they were executing on it. So, I mean, I was doing content audits for their website. I was doing governance plans. We were doing, coming up with like a strong brand voice, tone of voice. I was also using my journalism skills and going and interviewing patients and doctors to try to get really like an editorial calendar and really strong new stories from the hospital system live on the homepage. So I really got a great start there. Did the same type of work over at Mass General Hospital, seemed to love health. I loved healthcare, working in healthcare. That's when I went back to school at Emerson College and got a master in health communication just so I could really understand, what the doctors were talking about who I was interviewing. And then sort of bounced around a little bit more in healthcare, went over to Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, a couple healthcare startups. At that time, I brought in my skill set. So it wasn't just writing for a website, it was writing direct mail, writing video scripts, writing social media ads. So really like expanded my repertoire of like what content types I could deliver on. But it was all, content marketing work, right? And I loved it. I still love it. I absolutely love it. I've never been one of those people who have wanted to like strongly pivot in my career. I have always felt very lucky in that I wanted to be a writer, when I was in high school, and here I am. I'm a writer. I'm doing my dream job.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. It honestly, it is amazing. And on top of it, I knew that I also just personally wanted to have a family, and I felt that at least for me, I wanted to have a job that was very flexible with that. And so I aimed during that time to try to have the ultimate goal of going sort of freelance consulting. And so again, super lucky. And also there's been a lot of hard work, but I've been able to make that happen. So for the past since 2019, I have been working full time on my own and had my own like group of clients. Amazing. I've worked with some amazing people, but yeah, and it's just been a lot of fun learning about different. I've definitely expanded from healthcare and insurance and in technology, although I have a lot of clients in those industries. But I'll do a little bit of everything. I wrote product descriptions for Clark's shoes a couple years ago. But yeah, certainly a lot of healthcare, a lot of technology organizations as well. So I enjoy what I do. This podcast is a new next step for me. I'm incredibly excited about it. I think there's a ton to talk about going on right now in our field, and there's a lot of questions. I think writers, content strategists, designers, marketers, I think everybody is just trying to navigate like what's going on with AI, what's going on with roles and responsibilities, how are things changing. So I think there's just a ton of material for us to cover in this, Allison, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
We are. And I think the curiosity is what makes us very good at our roles, which means this is a super exciting time for anyone that loves to ask questions. And a very important, it's very important that we're learning to ask the right questions in terms of learning new skill sets and being able to make those small pivots with trends. But I just want to say I love I loved your reflection on how lucky you feel and grateful to be doing work that you love. Because when I was at Emerson for undergrad, I remember telling people I wanted to be a writer. Now, am I like the next great American novelist? I don't know, TBD. I do like creative writing, but I have found that writing, although creativity is a huge part of it, we're business people. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that is not necessarily considered or acknowledged. So if you tell somebody who doesn't necessarily understand how marketing or UX brings value to a company, then you might just think, you might have your assumptions about writing. But at the end of the day, not only are we creative with what we do, but we're helping a business to reach its goals, and delivering value that way. So that's been a very interesting thing for me to learn in my career, is how to bring in the left side of my brain more to work with analytics and make sure that I'm measuring things to verify and not just lead on assumption alone. But let's talk a little bit more about the differences
Yeah.
between content marketing writing versus UX writing and content design. So for the listeners, I'm going to be using the phrase UX writing in this episode. But what you should know is that depending on the company, the organization, the team, different professionals will refer to this role and its skill set in different ways. So I'm going to say UX writing today. You may hear content design, UX content strategy, which is different than marketing content strategy. But know that there are a lot of overlapping transferable skills. And I think in other episodes, we'll likely dig into the granularities of those titles and what they can mean within the industry. But for now, I'm going to say UX writing. And UX writing is copy that is primarily written to help users navigate a product and reach their goal. So that might be something like if you are filling out a car insurance quote form and going through that experience, it's making sure that the user understands what different types of coverages are and how their policy is going to protect them. And then after they buy a policy, it's helping them understand where they can go to pay their bills, how they can schedule their payments, how they may need to file a claim, making those things easy for them. And the overall goal of UX writing is to provide clarity, increase usability, and ideally to say things in a very succinct, simple, and clear manner.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for that. And in a similar way, I'm going to use the term content marketing or content marketing writing. But yeah, I mean, that just really is the content that really gets people to the product or to the brand and keeps them engaged with it too. I mean, UX writing is more of like sort of the navigation and experience. And I'll let you be the one who really explains that because I know you can do that better than me. But, you know, if you think of a good analogy is like if you're in a car, right? So the GPS nav is sort of like the UX writing, guiding you along the way through the ride. Whereas the content marketing writing is sort of the music in the car and how the seats feel. And yeah, just like sort of how you feel and how your experience getting to where you're going. That's
Exactly.
like the
And
best analogy I could come up with.
no, I love it. And it's like,
Yeah.
if the UX writing isn't there, the UX writing would almost be like how you're able to choose the songs on the app on your dashboard while you're driving. How easy is
Yeah.
that? Right.
Okay.
And then you turn on the song and then you have this amazing experience. And I do want to warn listeners, you might notice a change in your thinking as we're going throughout this season, because working in these fields, you're going to start noticing how day to day things contribute to your lived experience. So be prepared the next time you get into a car to think about UX writing and content marketing and storytelling and how these concepts really exist in so many different facets of our daily lives.
Yeah, exactly. And so just more specifically, I mean, yeah, there's the car analogy, but then just sort of the specifics. I mean, the content marketing piece, that's sort of the blog articles, the podcast episodes. Actually, I think podcast is growing big time and should be an area that companies look at more carefully and invest in.
Mm.
Emails, same with email. Well, email's always been great and it is consistent, but I think actually it's going to become even more. I've heard some other thought leaders say that email with the growth of AI, email could become actually even more important. Case
Yes.
studies, like any sort of those storytelling pieces, that's content marketing writing, whereas the UX writing is the micro copy. If you haven't heard the term micro copy, that's sort of the button copy, the error message copy, the educational wayfinding throughout the product experience, the instructional or action-based content that helps with that accessibility, clarity, and usability.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, for example, if a customer of Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem was navigating their patient portal, a UX writer would work to make sure that the headings on the navigation were intuitive to them and they knew how to get to messages from their providers versus how to pay a recent bill. Whereas content marketing may involve informational emails about seasonal viruses that they need to keep out a look for and how to schedule those appointments. I think because of AI, there's so much overlap. These fields used to be way more siloed. And I think that it's going to be to the benefit of businesses as well as their audiences to break down that wall. And so I'm really excited to talk more about how our worlds converge.
I totally agree
I
with
was
that,
going to,
Allison. I was actually thinking about
yeah.
before, I was like, we should talk about this briefly. Like, so yes, I think that UX writing, content marketing, right, content marketers, and is they're very siloed. They've been traditionally, you know, more siloed. I think you're right with AI. I think it'll become even more important over time for writers and content strategists to really roll up their sleeves and understand both disciplines.
And if people are new to this part of the industry in general, you may have, if you're not new, rather, you may have heard terms like top of funnel, bottom of funnel. And that's where the separation of and the silos really occurred, in my opinion. Tell me if you think differently, Emily. But a content marketing writer would really be, you know,
I
ushering
agree.
an audience through top of funnel with like some touches here and there from UX writing. But then once the user becomes a customer is really when it becomes it, it's the onus on the onus of the UX writer to usher them through the product. And so we used to think of top of the funnel, bottom to the funnel, and separated those. We need to start thinking of it as an hourglass and make sure that that sand is flowing from top to bottom way more seamlessly. And the only way we're going to do that is if we understand each other's roles, our different skill sets, and how to make them work together.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So actually, maybe this is a great time to talk through some of the takeaways that we can offer for, any sort of content strategist, content marketer to bring back to their own business. I mean, one of the things I was thinking is it's really important now more so than ever, like if you work at a large company especially, like have a shared style guide between the UX writers and the content marketing writers. Like make sure they're all like following the same principles for style and tone of voice. You want it to be a seamless experience for the end user.
Yes. And what I've learned is really helpful. It is to ensure that those documents are living and breathing. So, for example, we might be using the same tone, but maybe we have examples in the style guide of what that tone would look like executed by a content marketing writer in in their channels versus how the tone may transfer to that micro copy or that error message on the UX writer's side. And really providing examples is the most important because many companies, unfortunately, don't yet have the content support across their departments. And they're likely going to be asking for assistance that you may not have the bandwidth to provide, but you can provide that style guide and make sure that they're able to use that as a resource. So that's where those examples really come in handy. But yeah, style guides are uh, very underrated.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. And sometimes they exist and people don't really actually look at them and really truly follow them too. So that's a problem. So really make sure you have that in place, that guide in place, and everyone on the team is taking it incredibly seriously and using it. I also think, I mean, and this can also be a place where you can talk about the style guide, but just having regular syncs between the content and UX teams, getting everybody on the same page is important and can be beneficial for having a seamless experience.
Yeah. And, I think everyone is inundated with meetings often. So there's this hesitancy to put another one on the calendar. But whether it's biweekly or even monthly, letting each team know what is on your roadmap and how you are communicating with the customer or the user is so important. I cannot tell you how many times I identified a collaboration potential that no one had thought of because the two areas were not talking to each other. So having, and I guess this would flow well into like shared tools, but
Yeah.
having a shared Notion doc or even a Trello board with a roadmap that you can share with other teams so that they understand what's going on in your world. And there's going to be plenty of times where like there's nothing that they can act on or necessarily have the ability to because of capacity on the team, but it's really important just to keep that awareness open and and that it exists, period.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, and same thing with training. I think that getting everybody to participate in sort of cross-functional training, like making sure the content marketing writers really understand basic user experience principles and vice versa. The user experience writers are understanding a little bit about SEO, a little bit about storytelling, and, obviously brand voice as well. Just making sure they're both understand one another's disciplines, and that helps as well. Again, going back to AI, I do think that this is gonna happen even more naturally. I mean, this is just like, I know I don't have a magic 8 ball, and it is hard to completely predict the future, but I mean, I know a lot of us are trying to try to figure out how this AI is gonna be it is changing what we're doing, and I think one of the things is just the importance of understanding one another's work is going to increase.
Yes, absolutely. And what is one of the answers that 8 Ball would give? Like time will tell or something.
Time will tell.
But
That's right.
and if you don't know what we're talking about by mentioning the magic 8 ball, do yourself a favor and get thee to a local toy store or even Amazon. It will definitely for
It's fun.
some delight. But what I was going to say is, this is a great opportunity within uh, companies to bridge the gap between their content and UX teams. Hold like an ideation workshop. Make it a day where it's kind of like an internal conference and you're teaching each other about what you do. Present internal case studies, right? And this is also just really good for professional development on an individual level anyway. Whether you're in the content marketing writing world or the UX writing world, you need to be able to confidently present a problem, a hypothesis, and share what the goals of a certain piece of work and its strategy are. If you're an individual, there are several courses out there, thankfully, on the internet now, way more than when you and I were starting out, Emily. So you can learn about content marketing, you can learn about UX writing. There are podcasts other than our own, which we will share in future episodes to continue your own learning and education. But regardless of whether you're in-house or you are a freelance consultant, like Emily and I are now, there's always continued ed to be had.
Yep. Yep, definitely. So, yeah, maybe we should just kind of leave it. There was one quick quote I read before planning for this episode. I just wanted to share it, and then we should probably wrap things up. But I read UX writing makes content functional, while content writing makes UX meaningful. And I just love that. So I just want to leave the listeners with that, and just to sort of encourage you all to think through, like, where do you sit on the UX or content marketing spectrum? Like, where do you want to go in your career? What do you want to learn more about, and where do you want to grow? These are questions that, we want to encourage you to ask yourself and to leave this episode with. So with that, I think we're about out of time, right, Allison?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that quote. I'm gonna need to like write that on a post-it and put it right up on my monitor. But thank you everyone for hanging out with us today on Content and Coffee. If you enjoyed the episode, hit follow, like, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. A quick like or share goes a long way. And if you are so inclined, we would love a review. But like Emily said, let us know what you want to hear and learn next.
That's right. Until next time, keep brewing great content ideas, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers.